All right, buckle up for a deep dive, you guys, into one of history's biggest mysteries, the JFK assassination.
Yeah,
And I think you already knew this, we're not interested in the usual, like, headlines.
right.
We're going way deeper than that, exploring alternative perspectives,
Yeah.
really trying to dig into the details that maybe don't get as much attention as they deserve, you know?
Yeah. And what's fascinating is that we're going back in time to the mid 90s,
Oh, yeah.
to a period where researchers and enthusiasts were uh, really piecing together.
Really piecing together a whole different narrative. And
Yeah.
for this, we have a unique window into that world through a bunch of fair play magazines from 1994 to 1996.
Wow.
These magazines, I mean, if you're into JFK research, these were like your Bible,
Yeah.
packed with conference reviews, evidence analysis, even debates among the researchers themselves.
It's like we get to be a fly on the wall, listening in on a community that's completely dedicated to uncovering the truth, no
Yeah.
matter how controversial it might get.
Yeah, no matter how controversial.
And they didn't hold back.
No, they did not.
Like one of the biggest events covered in these magazines is the 1996 JFK Symposium in Liverpool.
Imagine that.
Researchers, JFK enthusiasts,
From all over.
both sides of the Atlantic,
Yeah.
sharing their findings.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, probably arguing a lot too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with a topic like that, how could you not, right?
Right.
But so this wasn't just a casual gathering. This was like a major event for the research community.
The platform.
Yeah, it was a platform where they could challenge the usual story, the accepted narrative.
And really dig into the evidence.
Yeah, and the magazine Fair Play gives us these cool little behind-the-scenes looks.
No, I like that.
The kind of stories that bring history to life. Like, there's this one about the researchers struggling to drive on, the wrong side of the road over in Liverpool.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's funny, but it also, reminds you these people came from all over to be
Yeah.
there.
United by this case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's wild how the JFK assassination still draws people in after all these years.
It really is.
And speaking of drawing people in, the symposium also got a ton of media attention,
Oh, wow.
which I guess kind of stressed out the organizers a bit.
I can imagine, yeah, with a topic as big as that, as controversial, all the media attention, it could be tough
Yeah, for
to
sure.
handle it.
Absolutely. And inside the symposium itself, things got, pretty heated, especially during this one presentation by a guy named Paul Mahan, a big Warren Report supporter.
Oh, wow.
You can probably guess that didn't go over too well with a lot of the people there who were skeptical.
No, not at all.
But it shows how much emotion this event still evokes.
Yeah,
See?
yeah, even after all these years.
Even among the people who, might agree with the official story.
Exactly.
I mean, it really shows the impact that this event had.
It's lasting impact.
Yeah, and how it's still, like, affecting people today.
Yeah.
On a really deep level. But what I find interesting is that the organizers, they still gave Mahan a platform.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even though they knew his views would probably cause a lot of debate.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that shows a real commitment to open dialogue,
Yeah.
even when it gets uncomfortable.
Which is so important.
It is.
In any historical inquiry, I mean, if we're only listening to the people who agree with us,
Yeah,
then we're never going to get the full picture.
that's the point, right?
comes
We're
through.
trying to find out what happened, not just hear what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And then there was this book room at the symposium, which, from what I read, sounds like it was just like buzzing with activity.
Oh, cool.
Like researchers, big names like John Newman would just be hanging out there, just chatting, sharing their ideas.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to have been there.
Me too. It's like, you wish you could have been a fly on the wall for that, right?
Absolutely.
And in the middle of all this, Fair Play gives us these glimpses into these alternative theories.
Yeah, like what kind?
So, for example, there was this researcher named Chris Longbottom who had this idea about JFK's throat wound.
Okay.
He thought it might have actually been caused by the president falling onto Jackie's roses after the fatal shot.
Wow.
It's a pretty vivid image, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not you agree with it, I think it shows how even the physical evidence can be seen in different ways.
Definitely.
It makes you think about how when we try to understand something as tragic as this, it can lead to some really creative theories.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they're unconventional, but still.
Yeah. But it reminds us that there's always more to uncover,
Yeah.
more layers to peel back, especially when it comes to something as complex as this.
Now, beyond the symposium, Fair Play really dives into the evidence and controversies surrounding the assassination.
They don't hold back.
They don't, it's like they're saying, okay, let's look at the facts.
Yeah.
Let's look at the details.
Let's see if the official story really holds up.
Exactly.
And what I think is really great about these magazines is that they don't just present these alternative theories as facts.
Yeah.
They really break down the evidence, they analyze the arguments, and they want you to think critically.
To think for yourself.
Yes.
So let's start with the medical evidence, because that's where Fair Play raises a ton of questions.
Okay.
They point out these inconsistencies between what witnesses said and the official reports,
Right.
especially when it comes to, like, where JFK's wounds were and what they looked like.
Yeah, and that's so important.
It is.
Because it's the foundation for a lot of the arguments.
Yeah.
Both for and against the idea of lone gunmen.
Yeah.
And any inconsistencies
That's the little thing.
can have a huge impact.
For example, there's this massive debate about the single bullet theory,
Right.
which basically tries to explain how one bullet could have hit both JFK and Governor Connolly. Fair Play spends a lot of time on this, really questioning if it's even possible, like physically possible,
Yeah.
based on, the angles and the wounds themselves.
It's a big way you can see why that theory is so debated.
Yeah.
I mean, if it doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
then the whole idea of Oswald acting alone
Falls apart.
starts to crumble.
And then there's the magic bullet itself.
Right, the one that went through both men.
Supposedly, yeah.
Supposedly.
Fair Play brings up some really interesting points about the chain of custody for this bullet.
Mm.
And if it could have been, tampered with or even switched.
Yeah, the chain of custody
It's important.
is so important.
It is in any investigation, really.
Especially one this big.
Yeah, and any little gap, any inconsistency.
It makes you question the evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, then they found these autopsy photos and sketches that actually contradict the Warren Commission's findings.
What?
Yeah, they point to a different entry wound
On JFK's back.
on his back, yeah, which, just raises more questions.
Wow, and let's not forget those first reports from the Secret Service and the FBI
Oh, yeah.
talking about a back wound that's totally different from what ended up in the final autopsy report.
Like, what's going on here?
It's like trying to put together a puzzle where the pieces don't fit.
It really does.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if they got those basic things wrong, what else did they mess up,
It makes you question everything.
It really does. And that's why these inconsistencies are so important.
Yeah.
They force us to look deeper, to be critical of the evidence, and to consider other explanations.
Exactly.
Now, switching gears to visual evidence, we can't avoid talking about the Zapruder film.
Oh, the Zapruder film, right?
Arguably the most famous home movie ever, right?
Yeah.
Captured the assassination in such detail, but it's still so controversial.
What's crazy is it's both objective and subjective at the same time.
What do you mean?
It's a recording of what happened.
Yeah.
But how people interpret it is still debated like crazy.
That's true, even today.
Exactly. And for years, that film was controlled by Time Inc.
Really?
And researchers had no access to it.
Wow.
Fair Play even suggests that there are different copies of the film out there.
Oh, wow.
With different quality, which, could change how we look at it.
That would be huge.
Yeah, it would.
It makes you think, were they trying to control the story
It does.
by limiting what people could see?
Yeah,
It's a good question.
it is.
Yeah.
And then there's that head snap you see.
Oh, right.
Some people say that's proof of a shot coming from the front.
Yeah.
While others say it fits with the official story.
It just goes to show, even when you see something,
Yeah.
it can be interpreted in totally different ways.
Depending on what you already believe, I guess.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. This researcher named Daryl Weatherly, he has this theory that there was a really high-quality copy of the Zapruder film that was given to certain researchers, on purpose.
Oh, wow.
Maybe to confuse things,
If that's true, that's a pretty serious attempt to manipulate things.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder who's behind it and what else they might have done.
To control what people thought.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so now let's focus on Lee Harvey Oswald himself.
Okay.
One thing Fair Play does really well is it takes a deep dive into Oswald's past
Uh-huh.
and really challenges the official story about who he was and why he did what he did.
I mean, that's key to this whole thing, right?
It is.
If we can understand Oswald,
Yeah.
we might be able to understand what really happened.
Exactly. And there was this researcher, John Armstrong, he really dug into Oswald's life, and what he found is pretty compelling.
What did he find?
So Armstrong found all these inconsistencies, like in stories about Oswald's childhood, where he went to school, even where he lived.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then there's his time in the Marines, the whole defecting to Russia thing,
Right.
his return to the U.S. It's a wild story.
It is.
And Armstrong says a lot of it doesn't add up.
Yeah. It makes you wonder
Wonder.
if he was really acting alone.
Or if he was part of something much bigger.
Yeah. Was he a pawn?
Was he in control?
We don't know.
Right. And, one thing that really struck me was that when Oswald got back from Russia, U.S. intelligence didn't really, debrief him.
Seriously?
Yeah, even though he could have had some pretty sensitive information.
That seems like a huge mistake.
It does, especially during the Cold War.
Right. You would think they'd want to know everything.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if maybe there was more to Oswald's story that they didn't want to know about.
Or that they didn't want us to know about.
Yeah, or that...
Right. Okay, so we have all these questions about Oswald.
Yeah.
And then Fair Play takes it even further and asks, what if he wasn't alone?
What if there were other people involved?
Exactly. And this is where we get into all these alternative theories and other possible suspects.
Why go?
Fair Play explores a bunch of possibilities, from organized crime figures like Jack Ruby to anti-Castro Cuban groups, even the possibility of a second shooter on the grassy knoll.
That's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's important to remember that, just because we're looking at these theories doesn't mean we believe them all.
Right.
It's about being open to different possibilities.
Yeah, keeping an open mind.
Yeah, and seeing where the evidence leads.
And one thing I really like about Fair Play is that they acknowledge just how complex this case is.
Mm-hmm.
They know there are still unanswered questions, and we might never know for sure what happened.
It's true.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we should stop looking, right?
Of course not.
I mean, that's how we learn from history.
And make sure something like this doesn't happen again.
Exactly. And speaking of different perspectives,
Yeah.
Fair Play also gives us this really fascinating look into the JFK research community itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because it turns out they don't all agree on what happened.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There are disagreements, debates, even arguments, like full-on arguments.
Wow, it's like a whole world of its own.
It kind of is.
But that's actually a good thing.
It is.
Yeah, it shows that they're really thinking critically, challenging each other's ideas.
Yeah.
And that's how we can really get closer to the truth.
For example, remember that back and forth between those researchers, Peter Whitney and John Armstrong, about the information Armstrong found on Oswald's background?
Yeah.
Whitney thought the government would have already known that stuff.
Okay.
While Armstrong thought there's always more to discover, that not everyone in the government is in on some big secret.
It makes you think about how much we really know.
It does.
About what goes on behind the scenes.
It really does. And then, of course, there's the Zapruder film again.
Right.
Even the researchers can't agree on what it shows.
That's why.
Some think it proves there was a conspiracy. Others think it supports the lone gunman idea. Fair Play even says that the film has been used as propaganda by both sides.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It shows how even something we can see can be interpreted in completely different ways.
It's almost like people see what they want to see.
It is. It's like a Rorschach test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? What can we learn from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that history is rarely simple. It's full of gray areas, uncertainty, different interpretations.
And Fair Play encourages us to be really critical of the information we're given.
Especially with something as complex as this.
Yeah, and they're not saying you have to believe every alternative theory out there.
Right.
But they are encouraging you to think for yourself, question the official story, and keep an open mind.
Exactly.
Because sometimes the most important discoveries
are the ones that challenge us.
Are the ones that make us look at things in a new way.
Yeah, completely change our perspective.
Okay, so we've gone over a lot in this first part.
We have.
From that Liverpool symposium to the debates within the research community, from the medical evidence to the Zapruder film.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
And you know what? We're just getting started.
Really?
Yeah, in the next part, we're going to be taking a closer look at some of the key evidence and controversies.
Can't wait.
And explore how these alternative perspectives really change how we understand American history, you know?
Sounds good.
The forces that shape it.
I'm ready.
So stay tuned. We're going even deeper down the rabbit hole.
Okay, I'm buckled in.
And who knows what we'll find down there.
You know, reading through these Fair Play magazines, one thing that really struck me is how they don't just focus on, like, the cold, hard facts.
Yeah.
They really capture the human side of this whole JFK research
Oh,
community.
absolutely. You get to see the personalities, the passion.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like more real, more relatable.
Like, remember that researcher from the Liverpool Symposium?
Yeah.
The one with the theory about JFK's throat wound and Jackie's roses?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's such a striking image, but it also shows you how dedicated these people are to finding answers.
Even if those answers are, a little out
Well, it's a
there,
little unconventional, yeah.
it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
like, what is it that drives people to spend so much time on a case like this,
Right.
decades after it happened?
It's a good question. What keeps them searching for those missing pieces?
Maybe it's that need to make sense of a tragedy or the hope for justice.
Could be.
Or just, I don't know, the allure of a mystery that just won't go away.
Yeah, the mystery of it all.
And Fair Play doesn't shy away from the drama either.
Well,
The disagreements within the research community.
they don't try to pretend everyone's on the same page.
No, they don't, which is, I think, a good thing.
It is. It shows that this is a conversation that's still going on.
Yeah.
We're still learning, discovering things.
And there are going to be bumps along the way.
For sure.
Like, remember that debate we talked about between Peter Whitney and John Armstrong?
Oh, yeah, about Oswald's background.
Yeah, it wasn't just about the facts. It was about, like, a different way of looking at things.
About how the government works, how information gets controlled,
Exactly.
and if there are secrets that we'll never know.
Right.
It's a good point. It makes you think about what we can really know for sure.
It's a reminder that history isn't always clear-cut.
Yeah.
People interpret things differently.
And Fair Play, they also include feedback from their readers.
Oh, yeah, the letters.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
It is. It's like we get to see how these alternative theories were being received by the public.
A window into how people were thinking back then.
Yeah, and some of those letters are, they're really powerful.
I bet.
It shows you how much this event affected people,
Yeah.
how it made them question things.
About power, truth, justice.
Exactly. And all of this was happening while the Assassination Records Review Board, the ARRB, was working to release all those government documents.
Right. The ARB, that was a big deal.
It was. It felt like we might finally get some answers.
After all those years.
Yeah, and Fair Play, they followed the ARRB really closely.
They did.
They reported on all the new documents, what they meant, sometimes even criticized the ARRB for being too slow.
Or for redacting too much.
Yeah, like they were holding back.
It's that tension between the government wanting to keep things secret and the public wanting to know the truth.
A tension that I think still exists today.
Absolutely.
So as we keep going through these Fair Play articles, I'm curious, what stands out to you about how they present the JFK assassination? What are the key things we should be paying attention to?
Well, one thing that I really appreciate is their focus on primary sources.
Oh, yeah, they really emphasize those original documents.
Witness testimonies, interviews.
Like they're saying, don't just take our word for it.
Go back to the source yourself.
Exactly. It's about empowering the reader,
Do their own research.
to think critically.
To come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, and another thing I like is that they acknowledge that history is messy.
It's complicated.
Yeah, full of contradictions.
They don't try to oversimplify things.
They don't. They embrace the uncertainty.
The fact that we might never know for sure.
What happened?
Yeah.
And I think that's okay.
It is okay to not have all the answers.
It's the searching that matters.
Exactly.
Asking questions.
And maybe the biggest takeaway from Fair Play is that the JFK assassination, it's not just a historical event.
What do you mean?
It's a cultural touchstone.
Oh, okay.
It represents a loss of innocence.
Yeah.
And it reminds us how fragile democracy can be.
It's a story that still resonates with us today.
Because it speaks to our fears
Yeah.
about power, corruption, the idea that things might be happening that we have no control over.
And now, as we go into the next part of our deep dive, I want to ask you this. How do these alternative perspectives on the assassination change how we understand American history?
That's a good question.
And the forces that shape it?
Well, if we accept that the official story might be incomplete,
Or even a lie?
yeah, then we have to rethink everything we thought we knew about the 60s, the Cold War, even how the world works.
It's like the ground starts shaking under our feet.
It does. We have to question everything.
And Fair Play does a really good job of connecting the dots.
Yeah.
They find these links between people, organizations, events, things that the official story just ignores.
Like they're piecing together a giant puzzle
Yeah, and they find these patterns.
that you wouldn't see if you were just looking at the individual pieces.
Like, for example, they talk about how Lee Harvey Oswald was connected to both pro and anti-Castro groups,
Oh, wow.
which makes you wonder about his real motives.
Yeah, was he being used
Right.
by someone else?
And they explore the link between Jack Ruby, the guy who shot Oswald, and organized crime.
Suggesting that Ruby might have been following orders?
It's like layers upon layers of secrets.
And they dig into the backgrounds of all these people who were connected to the assassination, finding hidden ties to intelligence agencies, extremist groups, even the Kennedy administration itself.
It's like they're peeling back an onion.
Exactly. And the deeper they go, the more disturbing the story becomes.
A story of power, corruption, betrayal, maybe even a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government.
It's a lot to take in, but it's important to remember that fair play isn't claiming to have all the answers.
Right.
They're presenting a different perspective,
Encouraging us to think critically.
to be open to the possibility that there's more to the story than we've been told.
It's about questioning authority, thinking for ourselves, and never giving up on the search for truth.
Even if it takes us to some dark places.
Exactly. And one thing Fair Play makes clear is that the JFK assassination wasn't just a single event.
It was a culmination of forces that had been building for years.
Yeah, like a clash of ideology
Under the clash of interests.
that led to this violent confrontation.
It's like the assassination was a symptom of something much bigger.
A reflection of the tensions that were bubbling under the surface of American society.
And by exploring those tensions, those historical currents that led to that day in Dallas,
Yeah.
we can gain a deeper understanding, not just of the assassination itself.
But of American history as a whole.
So let's dive into that historical context a little more.
Okay.
Because fair play doesn't just focus on the assassination.
You look at the bigger picture.
The political climate of the 60s, the Cold War, the role of institutions like the CIA.
One of the things that comes up a lot in Fair Play is this idea that Kennedy was challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
He was shaking things up.
Both at home and abroad.
And that made him some powerful enemies.
People who didn't want things to change.
Like, domestically, he was pushing for civil rights, which a lot of people, especially in the South, were against.
And internationally, he was trying to ease tensions with the Soviet Union.
Which worried a lot of people in the military and intelligence communities.
They saw it as weakness.
And let's not forget, he was going after organized crime.
Oh yeah, they definitely didn't like that.
So when you think about all of that, it's not hard to imagine that some people might have seen Kennedy as a threat.
A threat to their power, their way of life.
And Fair Play suggests that maybe the assassination wasn't just random
But a deliberate act
to get rid of Kennedy.
to protect those interests, to maintain the status quo.
It's a scary thought, but one that we have to consider.
Especially when you look at all the unanswered questions.
Like the CIA's role,
Jack Ruby's connection?
the possibility of a cover-up,
Fair play really digs into those questions.
connecting Kennedy's policies to the groups that opposed him.
To the events that unfolded in Dallas.
Like, they talk about how the CIA was involved in trying to overthrow Castro in Cuba.
And how some of the people involved in those operations were later linked to the assassination.
They also explore the links between organized crime and the CIA.
Suggesting that those two groups might have had common goals.
Like getting rid of Kennedy.
And then there's the Warren Commission itself.
Which Fair Play criticizes for not looking at the bigger picture.
For ignoring evidence.
For not being thorough enough.
It's like they're saying, we might never know for sure.
But we can at least try to get closer to the truth.
By being critical. By questioning the official story.
And that's really what Fair Play is all about.
Encouraging us to think for ourselves.
Not just accepting what we're told.
Recognizing that history is complex. That there might not be easy answers.
Right. And one thing Fair Play does really well is connect those seemingly random pieces of information.
Yeah, they find these threads that link everything together.
Like a giant tapestry of historical events.
And they challenge us to think differently about the JFK assassination.
To see it as part of a bigger story.
A story that's still unfolding today.
It's about understanding the forces that shape our world.
The power dynamics, the hidden agendas.
The things that happen behind closed doors.
So as we go forward, it's worth asking ourselves, how can we apply what we're learning from Fair Play to our lives today?
How can we be more aware of these hidden forces, these power struggles that are always going on?
How can we create a more just and transparent world?
Where the truth matters.
Where people are held accountable.
These are big questions.
But they're important ones.
Because the past isn't just about what happened before.
It's about understanding how we got to where we are today.
And maybe, just maybe, by studying the JFK assassination,
We can learn something that will help us face the challenges of our own time.
one thing that really stands out to me about Fair Play is, their commitment to like real research.
Yeah.
They don't just throw out these crazy theories and expect you to believe them.
Yeah.
They actually care about evidence and methodology.
It's refreshing, right?
It is.
Especially with a topic like this,
Yeah.
where there's so much speculation.
It's easy to get lost in all that.
It is.
But they're not saying, like, just trust us, there is a conspiracy. They actually show you the evidence.
The discrepancies.
Yeah, and they encourage you to, like, do your own research, come to your own conclusions.
It's about empowering the reader, you know?
Yeah, make up your own mind.
Don't just take our word for it.
And they're not afraid to criticize bad research either.
Oh, yeah, even from people within the JFK research community.
Yeah, which I think is important.
It is. It shows they're really committed to finding the truth.
Yeah, not just pushing an agenda.
Like, remember that critique of Sheldon Inkel's theory about Oswald and the test drive?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It wasn't personal. It was about making sure the research was solid.
Yeah, being rigorous.
Holding each other accountable.
Exactly.
Making sure everyone's doing their best to get to the bottom of this.
We're all on the same team here.
Yeah, trying to figure out what happened.
Now, taking a step back, it's amazing how Fair Play captures the mood of the JFK research community in the 90s.
It was a different time, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was this renewed interest in the case, partly because of the ARRB and Oliver Stone's movie.
Oh, yeah, JFK. That movie really got people talking.
It did. It felt like the case was back in the spotlight.
And new information was coming out.
Exactly. And Fair Play really reflects that.
That energy, that excitement.
Yeah, it gives researchers this platform to share their findings, argue their points, connect with people.
It's like we're watching history unfold in real time.
It is a community working together to try and understand this massive event.
And it's not just the researchers, remember. We have those letters from readers, too.
Oh, yeah, the letters, those are great.
It gives you a sense of how the public was reacting to all of this.
Yeah, it's like taking the temperature of the nation.
You can see how the JFK assassination had become this cultural phenomenon.
Way beyond just the research.
It was personal for people.
Well, it was.
They had their own theories, their own questions, their own struggles to reconcile what they were being told with what they felt.
And those letters, they really show how much this event impacted people.
Yeah, on a deep level.
It's a testament to its power, you know?
Yeah, how it still resonates with us today.
It speaks to something fundamental, I think.
The need to understand,
To find justice.
to hold power accountable.
Even when the answers are hard to find.
Especially then.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Fair Play,
Yeah.
I think it's important to think about what these alternative perspectives mean for us, you know?
For our understanding of how American democracy works.
Exactly, because if we accept that the official story might not be the whole story,
Or even that it's a lie.
it makes us rethink some pretty fundamental things.
About power, about secrecy, about how much transparency we really have.
It asks some tough questions.
It does, like, who gets to decide what we know?
Yeah, who benefits from keeping secrets?
And how can we, the citizens, hold our leaders accountable when so much is hidden?
It's a challenge, right?
It is, but Fair Play gives us some tools to navigate that challenge.
They teach us to be skeptical, to think critically, to look for different perspectives.
To question everything.
They're telling us, don't just accept what you're told, do your own research, dig deeper.
And never stop asking questions.
Because finding the truth,
It's a responsibility,
it's our responsibility as citizens.
especially in a democracy.
And that's the legacy of Fair Play.
The search for truth never ends.
It's up to us to keep digging, to keep questioning, to keep demanding answers.
So as we finish up, I encourage you, keep exploring these different perspectives on the JFK assassination.
Yeah, don't be afraid to challenge what you think you know.
Keep an open mind.
Keep digging, keep questioning.
Keep searching for the truth.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.